What's up, geography people? It's Mr. Barnes back again for part 2 of section C and D in your internal assessment. Let's get right into it. If you remember, my research question had to do with what is the relationship between the resorts and the pollution in the area. And so I wanted to look, after I started looking at the number of rooms and the bags of trash, I also looked at the cost of the most expensive room and the cleanliness, because I figured, the more expensive, or the less expensive first, the less expensive the room, the least cleanly the room will be. Likewise, the more expensive the room, the more expensive the room, the more cleanly it would be on the bipolar. So I wanted to represent that in a graph form, but when I did that, you'll notice that because the most expensive rooms are so high in number, it was hard to show two graphs next to each other, two bar charts next to each other. And so what I did was I modified the data, and you can do this as long as you say that you've done this in your analysis. I modified the data to show that the least expensive resort would get the number 1, and then all the way on down to the most expensive resort with the highest number, to show the difference between the resorts. And what happened was, when I created my graph, it actually produced a much clearer representation, a much easier to read representation of the overall, cost of the room compared to the cleanliness. So if you can remember from the last video, once you get this information, the best way to write your analysis for the data that you've presented, I put this in my paper, remember, is to remember the P approach, PEA, patterns, examples, and anomalies. The overall pattern is for the more expensive resorts, you can see here, to have a higher bipolar survey, and that makes sense because they're going to end up being the more cleanly resorts. An example of this would be the circle here that I show you. So these ones are more expensive down the line. You can see here, more expensive, and scoring better on the bipolar. Likewise, these ones are less expensive and scoring lower on the bipolar. Okay, so there's the pattern. Okay, an example would be, like I said, those resorts there and these resorts here. And then an anomaly, I like this one right here because this is the most expensive resort according to our data, and yet they only scored a 1 maybe, or possibly a 2. I'd have to look at the data on the bipolar survey. You'd expect for them to score at least a 3. And so that's an anomaly. Again, this one is least expensive, but yet it scored quite high on the bipolar survey. You could point that out as well. Okay, so patterns, examples, and anomalies. Don't forget to do that. All right, as you start to create bar charts or whatever charts that you create, it gets a little redundant in your paper when you just put a lot of charts and graphs in. And so one way that I can show you how to improve your data analysis and the presentation of the material is by showing your data more spatially, meaning putting it in the context of the place that we went. And in order to do that, in order to show you that example, what I've done is I've created a couple of pie charts. And I've taken these pie charts from the local coastal cleanup. So if the barangay had more coastal cleanup or didn't have as much coastal cleanup, you'd be able to see that. And instead of just putting these barangays on my paper just as blank pie charts, what I've done is I've essentially found out which resorts are in what barangays and added that information and those statistics to my map that I created. And so the barangays, the San Teodoro barangay includes Sea Spring Resort, Planet Dive, Balay, and Aqua Garden. And so the information that I took was from that information. Let's see, so 13 in San Teodoro. If I go here, okay, so all of these would then be in San Teodoro. So all of these resorts, I just decided to take these resorts here in San Teodoro, these ones here in Bangalangit, these ones here in Ligaya, these ones here in Sulu, and then these ones here in Anilao. And again, that is my representation. And of course, I would say that these are the resorts that I chose for these pie charts here in my analysis. But you get the point. Essentially, instead of just showing the bar graphs, what I've done was I represented the data more spatially by putting it right onto the map. And it makes it more fun and interesting to read and to look at. Finally, the last thing that I want to talk about are the patterns and examples and anomalies of this map here that I've created, because again, the patterns, examples, and anomalies should be done basically for every amount of information that you add to your data presentation. And so if I'm going to present this information, obviously I'm going to want to talk about it. And so my pattern is that the majority of resorts, regardless of what barangay they were in, I was hoping that some barangays would be greater than others, but I mean, Anilao, obviously all of them are doing waste management, but the pattern is that the majority of the barangays are doing waste management and do coastal cleanups. Examples of this would be basically any of them that I selected. You know, you could choose any of the barangays to talk about. An anomaly would be the closer, maybe you could say that the closer to Anilao, the more likely it is that they do a coastal cleanup. That would be an anomaly because the rest of them don't really fit that, or I guess you could say that Anilao doesn't really fit that general pattern of, you know, some of them saying no and some of the resorts not, you know, being part of that coastal cleanup, even if the majority of them are. And so this one turns out to be the anomaly in this case, I guess. Depending on how you write it, that's essentially what the examiner is looking for. And so I hope this video is helpful for you. If you have any questions, be sure to ask me. I'll be more than willing to help, especially if it has to do with Microsoft Excel or any of those other things that you don't really learn in geography class, but you need for the class. And so I hope this video helps, and good luck on your IA. 2 more videos to come, the conclusion and evaluation.